Adjournment. So I was just talking to her, like, we started, like, she's not, yeah. My dad was like, he was
I don't know much about it, so, you know, I was told that why.
This packet, your packet, do you have packets?
No, we really don't have a packet all night. I was told that's how we got this, the agenda.
Pass these around.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have someone to look at? Do you want one?
yeah.
I think we might be the only one that has a copy of the minutes tonight.
It's okay, it looks like I tried to adjust it so it stayed instead of.
It's a weird thing,
but.
It's just an email, print it out.
I know Chip's not gonna make it. Well, it's really probably just.
Nervous about Sunday, so we're going to try to
Three of us, we got.
almost all Sunday's races Saturday.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, which means we're there at 7 and we're done at 11. Yeah, miserable. We're walking in trying to for the content, whatever. Yeah, there's 170 cars Sunday. So, yeah. The Suburban down there, the food trucks, he sold out everything. So, he did good. He was absolutely good.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah, good. It was minimal problems, mainly just, I didn't have enough help, so the help I had in places, they just got tired of being there, so they didn't come.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, because we probably.
that was tough. Yeah, 2 days makes it a lot better.
Happy kids always get it.
Yeah, they want to keep it all
I
done.
know, we're not changing it.
That's good. Clean is good. Trying to hear that.
So I have to be there tomorrow. That's smart. I'll have to do some stuff in Pennsylvania.
I'll see you on that. I literally don't.
All set, Scott? There you go. All right. Well, we got the Zoom dialed in. I guess let's come to order for the August 20th meeting of the Brook Township Land Preservation Committee. And we're going to do a quick review of the minutes. One copy. And if you have anything, very good. So, any mistakes? Yeah. You guys got to catch me in my mistakes.
Yeah, I do.
What's that? Oops, okay. So there's a spelling. Apologies to Laura Bird. Fix that. Get you certified. action items. Anybody have anything to bring up tonight for discussion about anything on the list for us to talk about today? All right. Next item on the agenda is the financial review. We don't have any financial data to review, so we'll move on to new business. We're going to go pretty quick tonight. New applications, I have not heard of any coming in from John Goodall or Jeff Shelton, and they aren't here to present any, so I think we're, the application deadline also is in a month or two as well, so usually expect to see new applications at the last meeting of the year. All right, so that brings us up to Sarah
Yes.
from the Brandywine Conservancy and our land preservation plan update.
Yep. So I have provided a little financial review. It's basically an update of all of the financial graphs year to date that as they will be placed in the plan. So I went through the plan and updated all of that, the financial data, just to be current. So this is all based on data as of 2023. So you have in front of you, and then I did provide packets at the back if anybody wants. These are all draft. I think depending on when the land preservation plan is completed next year, I might try to get any financial information from anything that occurred this year, just squeeze that in if any land is preserved or any financial commitments are made over the course of this year, which is why it's still in draft. But that first page, I have kind of accomplishments to date. So this just shows preserved lands. There's a little line on both graphs that just indicates when the open space tax was implemented. And as you can see on that first graph where acres protected, which is cumulative. So you can see there's a big push in that 2007 to 2017 range. A lot of acres were preserved in that, and we've slowly tapered off. I do want to preface all of this. There's a significant slow across the entire county and I'm sure country in preserving land over COVID. So there wasn't really much that could be done, especially in terms of outreach during those really 2020, 2021, 2020 kind of lingered into 2022. So that's why in the acres protected per year, you can clearly see that there's a significant drop-off in that range. But I do have some quick stats kind of at that bottom where typically a land preservation plan, when we've done it in the past, we just look back at the last 5 years and then kind of project forward the next 5 years. So unfortunately, looking back the last 5 years, because of the impacts of COVID, there's not a ton of data that we can glean. But since the last land preservation plan, which was finalized in 2018, almost 400 acres have been preserved, and then to date, about 32% of the township land has been protected, and the remaining land, so of the remaining land for preservation, about 22% is priority land, so you see that 3,500 acres of areas of opportunity for future preservation. And then looking over the last 5 years, I know COVID also impacted real estate values, but it's about looking at average cost per acre, about $5 grand per acre, which is consistent with kind of the county average too. So those are some quick stats looking at what has been accomplished to date. And then if you look over at the next page, that's a snapshot of the earned income in terms of the tax revenue that you get for the open space tax. So at that 0.5% that was passed in 2006, you can see how it's slowly grown over the years, and that's largely to do with, additional workers coming into the township, and with new development, you have new tax base coming in, and then this is all based on average income. It's based on your income. So as the average income increases, you'll see an increase in the revenue. So I have some quick stats at the bottom. The average over the last 5 years annually is about $720,000 that the township receives for open space tax. And then the breakdown per worker. So it's based on your earned income. So it's about $200 per year, and that breaks down to about $18 per month. And that's for your average salary worker. So that fluctuates based on your income. So lower income, you would see a lower per month per year cost, and then a higher income, again, would be a higher per year per month. So that's the snapshot of the tax revenue. If you flip to the next page, this gets to breaking down basically the financial makeup over the years of how much township money to other funding sources each year is used for preservation. So that top graph, the navy blue bar in those graphs, that represents Honeybrook Township money. And then the other various colored bars would be other funding sources. The main funding source would be Chester County, that's the orange. And then funding received from the state, which is a dark green. And that other is other sources, so any funding sources that are received from other sources, whether it's private, public, don't fall into these other categories. There is a small line. Sometimes there's separate project expenses that are incurred. I only saw in the data that happening in 2003, but that's what that would be. Anything not included in the total project cost. Then that graph below, that shows basically for every dollar that the township contributes to a preservation project per year, how much money has been contributed by other sources. So really getting into how the township's open space funds have been leveraged. So since basically the average since 2003 was for every dollar that the township spent towards preservation, $1.04 was the match for that over the years. However, since passing passing that open space tax, it has increased. So the 10-year average, I pulled 10-year and 5-year just because we did have a little bit of a gap in the data due to COVID that skewed things a little bit. So for the last 10 years, for every dollar that the township contributed to preservation, about $3.75 were contributed from other funding sources. And then the 5-year average, going back to 2018, for every dollar spent by the township, about $2.79 were contributed from other sources. So really maximizing, you've been great at maximizing your tax dollars, I think, receiving. So Chester County requires, is it a 50-50 match or the challenge grant? I can look at that, but oftentimes in other municipalities, I did a plan in East Nottingham. They haven't been as successful in finding other funding sources. I think Honeybrook is unique because you're at the headwaters of the Brandywine, and the Brandywine is, there's a lot of funding focused on the Brandywine. So you've really been able to capitalize on those other sources. So that's kind of just an overview of looking at per dollar cost to the township. And then the last page. Now this is definitely a in draft snapshot. We're still waiting to get confirmation on some of the numbers that we received from the school district, but just to kind of give an overview, as part of this project, we did an update to the cost of community services. So the cost of community services analysis factors in basically looking at the cost to preserve land versus the cost that development might bring in terms of increased demand on community services. So to figure this out, we get data from the county, just basic tax-based data. We receive financial data from the school district, so that's looking at the amount of taxes that school district gets from individual municipalities, and then we look at township financial information like road maintenance costs, different service costs, if a township has a police service, that kind of thing. So any services that different land uses would require. Like I said, we're still waiting to confirm some numbers from the school district because the numbers we received didn't seem quite right. But this analysis, at least in the draft form, does reveal that residential land use costs. So what this little graphic shows is that for every dollar received in taxes, so a residential land use contributes $1 to the township in taxes and to the school district to the various services. They require $1.04 in services. So residential land use has the highest demand on community services. A lot of townships often see this when school districts need to expand for some reason, enhance their facilities to accommodate additional school students, that kind of thing, that is brought in through new development. Also, additional traffic on the roads might require more municipal funding to improve the road systems, that kind of thing. So basically, what this reveals is that residential development costs the municipality money because they're not breaking even in terms of what's contributed and what's needed, while agricultural, commercial, and industrial is a significantly opposite. So for every dollar that an agricultural property contributes to the township, they only require 4 cents in return in terms of community services. So that's why we typically encourage open space preservation, just to balance those books a little bit in terms of how much services are required for different land uses to make sure that tax base is even. So one of the reasons, so some municipalities have a lot higher of a ratio. So I do think this demonstrates or can demonstrate that the township has been really good at preserving land to keep these books balanced. One thing we do want to look into is the Plainsec community in Honeybrook. Although contributing in taxes to the municipality, often don't require as many community services because they're not sending their children to the school. So it kind of may skew the school district numbers. So that's something we're trying to figure out how to capture, just to see kind of the retention of the Plainsec and Amish community in Honeybrook Township, how that is also a benefit in terms of lessening the demands on the school district, and lessening, I mean, my school district taxes are definitely the highest taxes that I pay in terms of my annual taxes. I always dread getting the school district bill. So minimizing the need to expand a school or increase facilities is always good. So before I talk about kind of the next steps for the land preservation plan, do you all have any questions on any of the information I presented tonight?
Lots.
Okay, great.
Since we're on this cost of community services, I'll start there. So when you say for every dollar contributed in taxes, are you only looking at school taxes or property taxes, or what's the input there?
So we're looking at school taxes, township taxes, and then any county taxes. So we looked at all of, so basically property taxes and any taxes that the township receives.
Okay, so you were putting a lot of emphasis on the school district data. Is that the only cost that you're looking at, is expansion of schools?
So we could only look at, basically this looked at this past year. So any additional like capital improvement projects, unless they have it in their budgeted 2023 data, it was 2023? Unless they have that budgeted in their annual budget, it wouldn't have been factored in.
But it still sounds like you're only looking at school district data, and community services are far more than schools. There are fire protection, police protection.
Right.
There's a lot of other community services, and I don't get the sense that those are included in your analysis.
Those are included. So we looked at the township financial, basically the budget, the taxes received versus the expenses. So we did look at expenses for fire, any municipal expenses that would be a line item in the budget. And that was factored into this analysis as well.
And what were you using for fire data, since it's a volunteer fire company?
Well, so there's a line item in the township budget. So we looked at, typically we look at the same budget information, the financial audit that the township submits to, I think, DCED. Each year the township submits that audit data to show the past years, the expenditures and the revenue. So this analysis factors in the revenue and expenditures for both the township taxes as well as the school district taxes.
Okay, but that's not really the cost of the service for fire, for example. I mean, are you looking at the fire company's budget or just the township's budget?
Well, does the fire only, so there is a line item in the township budget of expenditures, what the township gives to the fire department. So does the fire department doesn't receive taxes from residents. I'm assuming it's funneled through the township to the fire
But the
department.
cost of operating a fire company is far more than what the township gives to them. That's my point, that if you're really looking at the cost of the community service, it isn't just what the township provides to them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
The costs, I guess, to be covered from the county and the state as well.
well, it's outside, outside funding sources. That we don't take into consideration in this particular analysis because that doesn't directly fall back on the taxpayers. So this specifically is looking at what the taxpayers contribute versus what they require in terms of, and I can send as a follow-up the full breakdown of the analysis, the rationale behind the analysis. We follow the cost of community services analysis is based on a Penn State study that they've developed. So that's the basis for this particular analysis, was developed by Penn State, by I think their agricultural department. So I can always reference back to that and send that out to you all for review and include that if that would be helpful.
Well, I just think that the way you're doing this analysis grossly skews the numbers. It's not really showing the cost of community services. Like, the township is, Sal, correct me if I'm wrong, but how much is the township contributing to law enforcement right now?
All enforcement?
To law enforcement.
No law enforcement.
Right, exactly. Well, I didn't know if there was, any money given to the borough, because they frequently help out in the township.
I mean, it's within your regular taxes go to help fund the state police. That's within your
Right.
state tax that you pay, so.
But
There's
that's
another
the,
thing that skews the numbers here, that we don't have a police department.
Right.
I know, but we do have law enforcement services. I don't know that fully being captured just because of the way the state police operates in rural areas in Pennsylvania. That's my point. Okay, but just a couple other questions about this cost of community services. I'm surprised to see that your ratios for commercial and industrial are currently showing the same as agricultural. That just seems way out of line. I mean, obviously, industrial and commercial are not going to be as much as residential, but I'm still surprised to see them coming up the same.
Yeah, which, when we run this for other communities, they also come up the same. I think they typically, I do think that the school district does skew things towards residential, and commercial also typically takes up, you know, less footprint in terms of, you know, the amount of roads required. But yeah, I can refer back to that, the original methodology to see if there's any insight in that, in terms of why those would be equal to agricultural. But that's consistent with all of the other cost of community services analysis we've done for other municipalities.
Okay, on the page about the EIT revenue. You have cost per worker, I'm assuming that's an average?
Yes, it's based on just the averages of the tax received.
Is there any way you can have data showing a range?
I can see, I'll have to look back at the census data. At least I could probably base it off of the buckets that the census. So yeah, I could break that down based on kind of the range, the salary range that the census breaks down.
Because when I look at these numbers, I laugh out loud. Not my house. And then annual EIT revenue, it's gone from 600,000 to 1.2 million. Now, what do you think is the major driver there? Is it that people are making more money and therefore paying more EIT taxes, or it's been an increase in numbers? And can we show that even looking at averages, what was the average when the program started as opposed to the average cost now, and show the numbers, and we've increased this number of workers. I think it just adds a little bit more depth to the data.
Yeah, we can definitely break that down in the report more. I think it's probably a mixture of both.
I think it is too. But
more workers and maybe a larger range in salary.
So if you can show that data, I think it would actually.
Sure.
And I'll give other people a chance to participate.
The average cost of $220 per year would represent $44,000 annual salary.
Right, per capita, or per person, per worker. And looking, so just based on my memory, I don't know, so a few years ago, I think the average was, and by a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, it was 35. So maybe it's that average income per worker has shifted slightly. But I don't know that it's shifted so significantly unless we have those higher, maybe a higher salary range that's shifting that. But I can look at how many more workers are in the township now versus 10 years and see if there's any correlation.
There are a bunch of people who really don't make a lot of money in the township, but would definitely skew things low.
Yeah, we've also had more people moving in, and
Yeah.
are the people that are moving in, if we can determine this from the data, paying more to support the program?
Yep. Yeah, they're moving into Chestnut Ridge and places like that where the houses are going for $400,000, $500,000.
that house because they had another house somewhere else that they sold and made a good profit on it, and maybe you're retired and I'm not working, so we, but that's why we're looking at a range on the cost per worker, because we have a whole range of workers in the township.
So we have a figure there for the cost per worker for like somebody in the lowest bucket. And that is for the highest bucket. Yeah, makes sense.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
Just one, on the leveraged funds graph, where you have a category above it, would it be possible to put a footnote in there of what other
needs?
I mean, I know we've gotten funds from, like the city of Wilmington and Pew Charitable Trust and some of these other large organizations that just think it would be helpful, even if it was in tiny print, that
Yeah, sure.
that the reader could see where some of this money's coming from.
Yep, and all of these graphs are kind of pulled out of the report, but this will fit within the third chapter of the land preservation plan. So more context will be provided, but I can throw a footnote at the bottom.
Yeah, I was also kind of surprised at the cost of community services numbers. I know there's different in other communities, but no communities are alike.
And so the numbers that we were asking for confirmation, we wanted to know how many students live in Honeybrook Township that go to the school district, because the numbers that they provided us seemed really low considering Honeybrook's population.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to confirm that, because that also impacts, the number of students coming from Honeybrook. More students means you require more school services. So that was the main number that we were a little bit confused by, especially looking at census data, how many people are in the township. It just seemed a little bit low. So we're still waiting on that to be confirmed.
Does that census data tell you how many of the population are plain sec versus non-plain sec?
I need to do some digging into the census data. We just looked at general population data. I don't, and maybe that would be represented in the census survey that they do, the community survey. But we need to kind of dig into that a little bit more to see if it's even
Because I think that would make a big difference
Yes.
on your school
right.
student numbers.
Right. So yeah, that was one thing that we did want to try to figure out if it's not in the census data, if there was a way we could kind of figure out just estimates for the township.
Do your schools have a census count for your students?
No, it wouldn't be hard to do, I don't think. It'd be easy to talk to the chairman or whoever's in charge and let her find out which schools, which they probably, I don't know how many schools are in the township right now. 3 or 4 probably, is it 4? 3, 4.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah, there's, I'm just talking this side, I'm just talking this area, that's all. Yeah,
There's 3
right.
on Beaver Dam.
Right. So if you take 25 per school, rough figure, 20 to 25, and you take that times, well, there's 7 right there without even looking around. You got some on the other side of, because I just talked to here in North Honeybrook, we were talking to some, there's got to be some on the other side of Honeybrook here, I mean, on the west
Well,
side.
there's one
a
on
couple in there.
Bertel Road, but I'm not sure if that's still in Honeybrook Township. West Collier.
So you could have 10 schools if you take that times, say 20 or 22, just a rough figure, there's 200.
Students, yeah.
So that would actually make your community services higher if you had 200 pupils in there, yet that would
Right.
add another, I don't know how much, but it would easily be 10, 20 cents, or 15, I'm not sure, it depends.
Yeah, and we can always, so in past, once we just get confirmation from the school district, sometimes the school district provides us with the cost per student, how much, it costs to have a student go, and then we could figure out kind of that offset as well, how much is saved by plain sec retention and creating a space for plain sec to thrive and that kind of thing, just the offset. So that's something I don't know if we got those numbers from the school district.
No,
Cost
they give
per
us
student.
They should be able to, because we have to enroll, our pupils have to be enrolled in the first week of school, they gotta send enrollments into, I think it's Twin Valley, usually,
Yes,
I kind
yeah,
of forget
yeah.
where, so they should have the figures.
Okay.
But they, maybe they don't wanna release them, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I know we have to send them in, so they should be available.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
One thing I was wondering, that falls into the purview of this too, is the average class size in Twin Valley, and how much that's grown, and at what point do those class sizes reach a point where a massive capital expenditure from the school is required?
Right.
If we're approaching that kind of tipping point, then, that makes the next development that comes along not a marginal increase in taxes, but a
Right.
big.
Right. We could always look at, sometimes school districts provide, a future budget or an estimated budget in the future. We can look to see if there's anything that I don't know if the school district would tell us that, oh yeah, an expansion is around the corner and that kind of thing. I don't know. But we can look at the school district website to see if they have any information on class size, what ideal class size is, if there are any plans for increasing capacity.
I can tell you that as of maybe about a year ago, they were, I think, south of 70%, so I don't think there's no year pushing.
So they have like 30% wiggle room.
The state of Pennsylvania recommends a maximum class size of 20 kids, and I know most Twin Valley classes are over that.
I can just tell you with the superintendent and administration, when I talked to them, they're actually, were discouraged that they may be funding issues because their enrollments are down. And I think a lot of that's to blame upon the charter schools and whatnot.
20, that's what's recommended. The teachers that I know, I worked in a school in my 20s, and the teachers there would say, we can manage 18 kids well, then we can do great with 16 kids. With 16 kids, we know we can make sure every kid succeeds in elementary school.
All of mine were 32.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
30.
Yeah, definitely gets 25.
This is a much smaller school where I work, so. So, yeah, I'm always dumbfounded when I hear about class sizes and schools these days.
So how many homes are going in there in Chestnut, what do you call that, Chestnut Road?
Isn't that 160 something?
Yeah, it was.
I know there's still 100.
Yeah, and they changed their design so that they could build bigger houses on the remaining, I'll say that, a few years ago.
So that could add 100 school children, because I don't know how much average development has, we'll see a child. Or is there older folks buying that? I have no idea.
back in there. I always see
They've
kids up
been
playing.
building that for several years, so
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
Yeah,
adding to it.
really cramping it up still.
it's
Yeah.
not like all of a sudden we're getting 100 kids.
Right, yeah.
But there's the mobile home parks, which 2 of them are being expanded. There was,
There's probably more children in the, those courses.
Yeah,
keep
they were-
calling it Honeycomb Estates, but that's not the name of it now.
No. Yeah.
Across from Kieffer Road.
Yep.
And then those 24 townhouses were legal in
And 115 new trailers next to Fast Concrete office on 322.
those.
We're
Yeah,
doing crushing rock for.
yes, there's gonna be 2 expansions of mobile.
So one thing that we did propose, in our proposal to the township that the board of supervisors did sign off on was looking at specific developments to see, kind of how that might change the cost of community services. We did a similar analysis, down in Westtown Township for Craybilly Farm, which was a huge contentious, development proposed for a farm along Route 202. So we basically looked at their sketch plan that they had submitted for that and ran some analysis, calculated or estimated how many students per household that might contribute. And it is a little bit crystal ball-y, but it could at least give some numbers, so, or just some ballparks. So if there's a particular property or new development coming in, and I can also chat with the township staff as well. But if there's any particular property or development that's coming in that you want us to kind of dig deeper into and look at, happy to take suggestions and confirm with the township. I just know you're kind of talking about different developments coming in, or if there's any properties that might be, up for development. I know there are some properties within the township that are held by LLCs, kind of sitting on with potential for development. So we can also look at, what could they put on that property by right, and then estimate from there. So if there's any properties that kind of are, pipeline for development properties that are of interest to the township as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. There are a couple candidates for that. First one comes to mind is Arbor's Glen, whatever it is, off 322.
I haven't come back with another plan.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm sure it will, but that was, I think, well over 249.
It was 400.
Well, they've
Yeah.
changed their plans, too. I mean, there was so many townhouses and there were so many twins, and,
Yep.
but yeah, it was a lot. But also on the mobile home parks, since the people who live on those lots don't own the land, they're usually renting land. But yet, there's frequently a lot of children, so the impact on school resources compared to the tax that's paid on that, because those aren't that property is not going to be taxed at the same rate as single-family developments.
So that'd be another potential.
And I can always confirm, I'll need to reach out to township staff to get the details on these two, so I can run that by them as well and see if they have any thoughts. I'm sure they're used to getting development plans and,
Well, some of these are already, I mean, the
The mobile homes.
expansions are already underway.
Yeah.
The townhouses at the Old Maple Inn, the inn is closed, and I know they've been cleaning up the lots, but they haven't started construction yet. The ones on 322 in Cambridge, they've been building those for, well, at least a year and a half. That's 37 homes there. There's several in the works, and then Arbor Glen, that's nothing's been finalized. And just Chestnut Ridge. I'm still building there.
Maybe a couple, if it's a quick and easy analysis, a couple might give kind of ballpark estimates. So when a new development comes in within a range, you can kind of figure, unless it's a 55 and older community, you can kind of figure X cost to the school or the township. Any other thoughts, questions about this that I can kind of go over? Kind of our next phase.
One more question. With a significant increase in development, and these developments that have already been approved, we're looking at probably a 15% increase in the population. So at what point does your cost of community services have to include a major overhaul of your roads?
Right, yeah, the threshold, so capital improvements are factored in, but oftentimes you have to, there's almost like a delayed impact from new development on existing roads. You know, you'll see that impact down the road, no pun intended, as you see more traffic. So, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, no, because it is, like you said, it is incorporated, but it's not going to fix it right away. I don't know how to, you know what I mean, like it's not.
Yes.
And also with using, because we're using 2023
Right.
data as well.
We're using past data instead of future projections because it's hard to kind of project budget needs. So that would be something we can kind of look into to see if there's any way to kind of estimate or calculate or figure that out in terms of kind of pressure on the existing road infrastructure and
Not just road building, but road maintenance.
right.
322 would be a 4-lane highway after all.
Well, you know, even with all of these developments that take it from township roads, they have to be, snow has to be cleared.
It's not going to get there,
We add parks. There'd be more expenses too.
Right. So, and we'll try to figure out, I know, you can kind of snowball with
Yeah.
figuring out, trying to calculate everything, but we'll do the best we can to kind of encapsulate all these thoughts and figure out ways to at least get some ballpark estimates. In terms of next steps, so you'll basically be seeing me at every land preservation committee meeting until this project's over. So I was planning on coming back at your October meeting, and that's where I'm hoping to kind of go over. I know we've been talking about accomplishments to date, but kind of nailing that down even more, and then start talking about goals for the next 5 years. Some case studies of different land preservation practices that have worked somewhere else, talking about kind of rounding out the information needed for pulling together the plan. And then we did want to talk about, at the October meeting, some opportunities for landowner outreach, and public outreach. So, we'll kind of, hopefully by then, have, some thoughts in terms of how we can, re-engage landowners, especially coming out of COVID, and, set you all up for success in terms of, getting you the materials that you need, make it easy for outreach. So we'll talk about that all at the next meeting, and then January is your farmer breakfast, which I hope to attend, but I've never been to a farmer breakfast. I know usually a Conservancy staff member, usually John Goodall, is there. But I didn't want to plan anything super extensive for that, because I know you meet prior to the farmer breakfast at 8 a.m. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, we usually only have about 45 minutes.
Right, so I didn't want to plan anything specific for that, but maybe we can talk about, maybe providing a little bit of a overview of this land preservation plan at the actual farmer breakfast, just kind of, just a summary of what we're doing and kind of basic information on that, and anything else that might be relevant for that, including in that farmer breakfast. But I probably won't have anything prepared for your meeting, because I know that'll be you only have a few minutes prior to that meeting to get what you need done. So that's kind of next steps for this process. And then we'll probably have a draft of the actual plan for your spring of next year meeting, which, off the top of my head, I don't know, is it April, March? April?
Should be April.
Okay. So we'll have a draft pulled together by then.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you gave us lots of ideas to strengthen our report, so this is great.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah. All right, I'll move on to old business. We've got a farm or a property off Beaver Road. It's, yes, we've got a plan in place. The funding's been approved. So we're just waiting on hearing some news about what the next steps are happening over there from, I think the Brandywine Conservancy is leading that one now. And we received conservation easement paperwork for property off Todd Road, and hoping to close on that by the end of the year. Okay, open forum for any other matter. Anybody have anything else to bring up, ask about? Next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, 7 o'clock p.m. right here. And then after that, January 21st, 2025, the meeting will be 9 a.m. right here, and reservations are required if you need. Yeah, you're welcome.
That's for the breakfast, but our meeting is usually.
The meeting will be at 8 o'clock. Yeah, the breakfast will be at 9. The meeting is typically just the reorganization meeting. 3 appointed officers. And that brings us up to adjournment. If there's anything on for Day or this. Anybody want to adjourn?
I know.
Okay, I'll give it now.